Hi, Eric Yellowstone here from Yamaha Worship. Today we're going to talk about soloing on the guitar. You might want to go and look at our Caged video as well, because that lays the foundation for a lot of different skills that I think are helpful in soloing. When I think about soloing, I think about playing melody. I mean, that really is what it is. And depending on the music that we're playing, and particularly in worship, most of what we're doing is really supportive. When I think about the guitar, I think of the blues and then everything else. And the blues, to me, if it's not half of the equation, it's at least a third of the equation. And part of the reason why is some of the stuff that makes the guitar so unique. It's like a piano in that you can play chords, but it's like a horn or a violin in that you can play bent notes, you can play vibrato, you can play all these different expressive things. And most of us, whether we realize it or not, we learn this from the blues. Some of us may have learned it through rock, but I guarantee you, if you follow the origins of that rock stuff back far enough, it's from the blues. Here are some of the things I think that we learn playing blues music that I think are really important. I mentioned bending strings. I think that's a skill that we should have. And I think you want to be able to bend at least half steps and whole steps. Sometimes you will bend some more extreme intervals, but those are the ones. I'm going to take the key of A, and I'm going to bend an F sharp to a G. So G would be, if I'm thinking dominant, F sharp to G, G is the seventh. Next, I'm going to take a G and bend it up to A. That's a whole step bend, very, very common. What I want you to see as far as how to bend is a few things are happening. One, my thumb is up on top of the neck, and when I bend, I'm pivoting against that. When I bend, most of the time I use my third finger, occasionally my first and second, never my fourth. I know people that use their fourth, it's just not in my arsenal. So when I bend, it's like turning a doorknob. Like I'm turning a doorknob from counterclockwise. And I don't know if you can see this, I might turn. Look at my wrist. When I bend, my wrist kind of pops out, and that causes the force to push the note up. So that's how you go about bending. One of the things that you have to do when you're bending is to be careful. Hear that extra noise? I may not want that noise, so you have to be careful to mute. And part of how I do that is with these back fingers, and part of it is with my picking hand. This inside part of my thumb, sometimes I'll rest it on a string that might ordinarily make a noise. One other thing I'll mention, I'm bending up, and I always bend up. Very rarely do I bend down. I know people that do that. I don't have it developed very well, but it's a viable option if that's something you want to do. All right, so some common bends in blues are, I'm going to bend on the G string, a D note, up to E. Another common thing is to play both of those. So you hear the bottom note and the D and the E at the same time, and the D is in motion up to the E. That could be a common phrase where you play up the pentatonic scale doing that. Another bend would be to place your little finger on the B string on the G note and then bend D up to E. You could bend up and then play the next note, or play them together. It's kind of like sliding thirds. Another variation on this would be to flatten your little finger so you're playing G and C on top, and the D is bending up to E. Now if we hear that against a C chord, it's kind of like country major pentatonic. All right, another bend on the B string, bend G up to A. Sometimes you will hear someone bend up and then go to the next string and play A. Another possibility is to make that bend, put your little finger on the 8th fret of the E string. Another way of using bends is to bend the note up before you play it and then let it down. In fact, if you do that, I don't know if I can do this with a volume control. I prefer a foot pedal volume control, but you can do it with the volume control on the guitar. You can create more of that pedal steel kind of figure. The next skill that I want to talk about is vibrato. So vibrato is bending, but it's bending in a very controlled manner and repetitive manner. So I'm using the same technique, the doorknob technique, but I'm just going over and over and over. The way to develop a good vibrato, I think, is start off by doing a half step and just do it really slowly. Once you feel that you've got this under control, start speeding it up. The faster you go, the less you bend. Because if you go really fast and bend a lot, it sounds like a sound effect from a cartoon. It's not desirable. But once you get the vibrato down, then experiment bending and applying the vibrato. At first, that's very difficult, so be really kind, really patient with yourself. It'll take a while. Again, most of the time I do vibrato the way I bend, which is with my third finger, supported with my other two fingers. Sometimes I'll do vibrato with my first or second finger, never my little finger. With the first finger, there's one vibrato that I think of as the B.B. King vibrato. Which is this super fast kind of hummingbird. And it's the only time that my thumb comes off, because I'm shaking my whole hand. And that's how I'm developing that vibrato. I don't know if I've ever heard it in worship music or not. Here's one last lift where you're bending and going across the other two strings to get to this top A string. Now, if I'm playing kind of a bluesy thing. You can hear how those licks work. In worship, you wouldn't do it that way. You would be worship is like anti-blues, where in the blues you play a lot of minor pentatonic and occasional major pentatonic. Worship music's the opposite. You play a lot of major and occasional pentatonic. All right, one more technique, and I guess I would say that I got this from the blues, but that would be to, instead of bending that note, slide. So as I get older and my fingers get softer and more frail, I find a lot of time that I'll slide into a note and then apply vibrato. So that can save a lot of damage on your fingertips. And also come up with some bigger, longer kinds of sounds that you couldn't possibly bend. And if you apply the vibrato on the end of it, it still gives you that bluesy effect. You can also do double stops and bend 2 notes, slide 2 notes. As well. Another technique that I got from playing the blues were hammer-ons and pull-offs. And so hammering an open string to a fretted note, or in the context of a pentatonic scale, because pentatonic scales have 2 notes per string, it can help you play faster and it gives a nice effect. So you play 1 note, hammer a note, play 1 note, hammer a note, play 1 note, hammer a note, etc. A pull-off is the opposite of a hammer-on. You pick the note and then pull your finger down like you're pulling it off the neck. If you combine hammer, pull, you can create some really interesting effects as well. Sequence of notes in a scale the way I just played. Now I could pick that, but the hammer-on and pull-off creates an interesting sound as well. I mentioned in a previous video playing scales that have 3 notes per string, and that's kind of the ultimate extension of this hammer-on pull-off. So I'm picking ones, hammering on, 2, pulling off, pick once, pull off twice. Sometimes I find it more difficult to do the pull-off descending, so when I get to the top, I'll descend, but I'll play my notes up, so I'm still hammering on, even though the pitch is going lower, lower, lower. The other thing that I learned from the blues is playing positions. And when I say positions, I'm talking about little boxes of 3 strings. So if I'm in the key of A, that might be my first box, my second box, my third box, and fourth box, and then finally, now these are all based off minor pentatonic scales, but you can connect each one of these to the cage system if you want it. So if we're in the key of C, that would be position 4. That would be position 5. That would be position 1. That would be position 2. And that would be position 3. So the value I find in this is taking these top 3 strings and developing these small little phrases on these top 3 strings that you can combine kind of like a Chinese menu, one from column A, one from column B. What I see happening in the blues is phrases are played that way, and then when they're going to play fast, they'll take a pentatonic scale and play in that one position. The rest of the time they're jumping around to these places where they have these little licks, these little phrases.